Of course, my latest example of learning from shame is this project. When Maureen contacted me to ask if I would read The Help with her and told me why she wanted to do it, I really wanted to say yes. I love Maureen. She's brilliant, imaginative, a longtime friend, and a great writer. I would give a lot to see writing more. So yes, of course. At the same time, I felt uneasy because I feared I might be too racist to do it. That old fear of fraudulence does have a race-sensitive department. What if I checked out this book and liked it? I am white. I come from Connecticut, circa 1950. There is no chance that if Maureen and I talk about white racism and how it is and is not portrayed in The Help, I will not in some way have to admit my own white racist conditioning. So I can't do this unless I'm willing to feel a little shame. Frankly, that's a small price to pay for learning with such a gifted collaborator. And thank God I looked at the book and saw in the first paragraph that if I hadn't agreed to read it all, I would have read no farther. I have come that far. Still, I had to read it because I had promised. I had come far enough to reject this book, like the 60 publishers who turned it down. But Maureen asked me to move farther, to read the book and make something about connecting across race out of it. Is this possible? I have to trust Maureen's instinct that it is, and Maureen's need, coming equally out of her family history and her skill as a psychologist, to make it a tool for honest connection. So trusting Maureen's instinct, I took a library copy with me to Puerto Rico when my husband and I went to San Juan for a conference of his. He would attend meetings, and I would lie in a hammock strung between palm trees on the beach and read The Help in the shade, looking up when I needed a break to watch the waves breaking through my toes. Now, it just so happens, because there does appear to be some sort of karmic justice from time to time, that the other group that was having its annual convention in the San Juan resort where we were staying was the SEIU. The Service Employees International Union is what the maids of Jackson became if they were lucky. It is the union for domestic workers, hotel workers, home health aides, often hospital workers, and in Massachusetts, state social workers. At our hotel in San Juan, the elevators and beaches were filled with dynamite black women labor leaders. And as I went around reading The Help, I wanted to say to them, wait, I'm not one of those white women who goes around reading The Help. But of course, that was my problem, not theirs. And I solved it by wrapping The Help in a towel when I moved back and forth to my hammock. And I noticed that current of shame. The fact is that even if I'm not one of those white women who read and enjoy The Help, like my own sister and some of my closest friends, I am one of those white women who has benefited all my life from looking like my ancestors came from Europe instead of Africa in ways that affect me every day, though of course my ancestors did come from Africa, like everybody's ancestors. So this is what I'm discovering from reading The Help. Use the shame if you're white. Let it send you into the thinking and talking about race that can change it. Wanting to avoid shame is not a reason to avoid contact with anyone whom people who look like you have historically oppressed. Accept a little shame as the inevitable result of your conditioned racism, classism, homophobia, ableism, and go for it. Learn from it, with it. It's for something. I don't think the day will ever come when I can be sure I won't be touched by shame in a relationship across race. But the day I started seeing that shame as a teacher was the day that I, and not the values of my generation, and not the cliche attitude we all know is the right thing, really got to my white race. Thank you.
Christina is writer-in-residence. And I echo Christina's urging you all to read both papers in their totality because they're quite powerful and you will enjoy them. So here we are, part of the conversation that I will lead for a few minutes, and that's just as a lead-in to our general discussion. A couple things to put on the table. Ironic as it is, the DVD, the Blu-ray comes out December 6th of The Help. There's nauseating ads everywhere. What I think about The Help. So that's something interesting. The book still remains quite popular. It's very much still a bestseller, and Catherine Stockett is about the business of promoting it everywhere she goes. So that's that to put on the table. I was thinking as both these women talked that it's interesting to me just from a personal standpoint that I was thinking, wow, how did I get The Help? I mean, I had heard about it vaguely, but I wasn't paying attention. It was actually given to me by a white friend. I have very few friends, so I am using the word advisedly. I mean that. I'm very deliberate about who I call a friend. And when she gave it to me, she said, "You're not going to like it." And I said, "Oh." And so I said, "Well, I'm not going to rush to read it." She said, "I think you're going to have to read it. I think it's going to come up, but you're not going to like it." So I think that says something already about, where folks are and all of that. I was unimpressed with the slogan of the movie, but I think it's powerful for this conversation. Change begins with a whisper. I would refute that and say that change begins with discussion and with loud talk, and with shame and with telling of stories. So as a way of thinking about and refuting that slogan and some of the way that the movie and the book are set up, let me ask this question of the two of you. When we talk about building relationships of any sort, and certainly when we talk about building relationships across racial lines, it seems to me two things have to be in play: trust and authenticity. So you can be authentic, I think, if you trust the person. But how do you get to trust if you're not authentic? And so often what happens in our discussions around race, if they are discussions, is the authenticity is somewhere here, but what we're doing is talking up here. Yeah. So I'd love the two of you to respond to that, if you would.
She started with the easy question. No, but it's a wonderful question because, well, a couple of things. When we talk about trust, we are talking about a process. We aren't talking about something that is going to happen automatically. And so that means that we have to be willing to trust our own experience, starting with staying connected to what we feel and trying to bring more and more of that in relationship. Trying to represent ourselves as truthfully and as caringly as we can. Oftentimes, and I think we should say this about authenticity, because oftentimes people think of being authentic as just say whatever's on your mind. Well, that's not authentic either. That's your brain's been hijacked by something, probably some fear or anxiety. So it takes, I think, a fair amount of staying centered, staying in your own experience, breathing, paying attention to what is going on with me, and then, looking at the relationship and say, what can this relationship bear at this moment? Now, sometimes what the relationship can bear, you may have 15 authentic things you want to say, but maybe the relationship bears the one thing that you can say that makes a room for other things to be said. But that, I would start by thinking, what do we mean when we say authentic? And do we trust our own experience, or do we become so fearful and scarred by what all of us have been through? I happen to believe we don't live in this country without having been scarred by racism. So do we become so fearful of those scars that we deny even to ourselves what we are experiencing? And we can't possibly then represent it to another person.
Christina?
would say, thinking about relationships across race, when I'm first meeting somebody of another race, I really take it for granted that they're going to distrust me. And I really respect that distrust. I know that it's founded in accurate and vivid experience. And I don't want to, I never want to say, trust me. So what I find is important is to trust, for me to trust the other person, for me to trust them. And then gradually, as you know, they sort of titrate their willingness to bring more and more of themselves into the relationship, for them to really feel that that trust is there in me for them. And, you know, I mean, to not to leave what I was saying, I can do or say really stupid things that are not, that shock me, that, you know, I feel like I want to wash my mouth out with soap or something. And maybe, you know, maybe it's something so small that the other person doesn't even really sense it, or it's just not that bad, you know. And it's not that bad. But to me, it's awful, because I'm not in control of that. So that's, I mean, that's sort of what you're talking about letting it all hang out. Absolutely not. I have to take a special kind of responsibility, knowing that that is possibly there, you know, and to be very careful. And of course, the reward is that you do achieve a mutual authenticity across race. And so both of you are going to places where neither of you has been before. It is enormously expansive, but it's something that you, I mean, I really pay attention. And I pay attention first to the other person's distrust, and they're right to that.